Rain slicked the concrete outside St. Barrow Medical Center, turning the ambulance bay into a blur of red and blue. The ambulance slid into place, brakes squealing. Before it stopped moving, Riley Shaw was already at the back doors. Luis kicked them open. Cold air and siren echo spilled in. On 3, he said. 1, 2, 3. They dropped the gurney. Wheels bounced over the grates, splashed through a shallow puddle the color of watered wine. Riley pulled the sheet back and saw why Luis had gone quiet on the ride in. The man's left leg was almost gone. He was mid-40s, concrete dust in his hair, safety vest streaked dark. His hard hat was jammed under a strap name in black letters across the front. Aaron Blake? From the hip to the knee, the leg filled out the work pants like it should. From the knee down, it hung by a few dull strands of tissue. The lower part lay twisted against the rail boot, pointing sideways. Blood slid off the stretcher in a steady line. Pressure is 70 over palp, Luis called, glancing at the monitor clipped to the rail. Heart rate 150. He keeps reaching for it. Aaron's hand fumbled toward the ruined limb. Riley caught it. His skin was slick and her glove cooler than it should have been. That mine, he whispered. Yeah, she said. We are on it. Do not look. She tightened the tourniquet high on his thigh. The strap was soaked and sticky. Her fingers dug into the soft flesh above the wound, searching for any sign of a pulse below the knot. Nothing. The skin under the work pants had the flat, heavy feel of meat out of a freezer. Behind them, sliding doors opened. The sound of the ER poured out monitors, beeping someone laughing too loud, someone yelling for respiratory. We need him in trauma now, a resident shouted from the doorway. We are not doing this outside. Riley glanced at the screen again. The jagged line shivered. The number in the corner stepped down. 70, 66, 61. He is dropping, Luis said. The lightness was gone from his voice. Riley, he is really dropping. She checked the tourniquet. It sat too close to the torn mess around his knee. Out at the site, there had been dust in the air metal groaning above the men shouting as they cut the rebar. She had thrown the strap on in a hurry in the back of the rig. Hurry had gotten him here. It would not get him farther. Lock his shoulders, she said. Luis leaned over Aaron and pinned him to the mattress as he tried to twist. Riley dragged the tourniquet higher toward the groin. Her gloves squeaked on bloody skin. She turned the windlass until the muscle under her fingers turned to stone. The sheets kept turning red. Her watch sat crooked at her wrist, black plastic scratched white at the edges. The second hand was stuck between the 4 and the 5. It had stopped years ago at 0407 and never started again. She still felt it ticking in her chest. She looked at the limb. Pale toes already losing color, white bone edged in gray concrete dust, where it had burst through the skin. It was dead weight that his body was still trying to carry. I need a scalpel, Riley said. Luis blinked rain out of his eyelashes. What scalpel? Sterile kit from the trauma cart. Lidocaine if you can grab it. We do not have time to wait on upstairs. A nurse stood near the doorway as if she had been about to come help and stopped. Her ponytail was damp at the ends. Her badge caught a flash of red light. K1 Emily. The surgeons are on their way, Emily said. If you move him now, they can take over. He does not have surgeon time, Riley said. Her voice stayed low and even. He has right now time. Please get me the kit. Emily hesitated. Her gaze landed on the dripping boot, the torn meat, the falling numbers on the monitor. Then she turned and ran back inside. Aaron's eyes rolled under half-closed lids. His hand twitched in Riley's grip. You got kids, Aaron? She asked, keeping him in her line of sight. 3, he breathed. 2 girls, boy. Should be in bed. I told them 9. Then that is where you are going, she said. You are not done yet. Another ambulance squealed into the far bay. Voices overlapped at the doorway. Somewhere inside, someone called for a crash cart. Emily came back with a metal tray and a wrapped bundle balanced on top. Her cheeks were flushed. She held the tray out like she was afraid to jostle it. This is what I could get, she said. It will work, Riley answered. She ripped the packaging open and set out what she needed. Scalpel, clamp, gauze, a bulb of saline, a small bottle of antibiotic wash. They settled into the tray in a pattern her hands had laid out 100 times in other places. Luis cleared his throat. You want me to go find Rhodes? He asked. Because this is the part where he starts yelling in my head. He can yell later, Riley said. He cannot fix a corpse. She turned Aaron's face toward hers. Aaron, the metal already took most of your leg, she said. I'm going to finish it clean so the rest of you has a chance. You might feel pressure, maybe a burn. Stay with me. Listen to my voice. He tried to nod. His eyelids fluttered like he was fighting sleep. Riley took the scalpel. The rain became a soft hiss on the awning. Sirens blurred into a single tone. Her world narrowed to skin and steel and the weight under her palms. She made 4 cuts quick and sure, through what still tied dead to living. Bright blood jumped then slowed as she found the artery. She clamped it off with one smooth motion. The lower leg slid free and dropped to the concrete with a heavy, wet sound. Emily flinched. She did not step back. Riley flushed the wound with saline until gray concrete dust and loose fragments ran off in pink streams. The stump gaped raw and red. She packed it with gauze soaked in antibiotic solution, wrapping tight until the bleeding slowed to a slow, steady seep. Her hands moved without shaking, no pause, just work. Pressure is coming up, Louise said quietly. 80, 84, heart rate is coming down. By the time a new voice cut across the bay, Riley was taping the last layer in place. What exactly is going on out here? She looked up. A man in a white coat stood just inside the doorway out of the rain. Dark hair, surgical mask looped around his neck, hands on his hips. His badge said Rhodes Daniel, M.D. His gaze traveled from the severed leg on the concrete to the wrapped stump to the clamp still between Riley's fingers. Traumatic amputation, she said. Incomplete when he arrived. It is complete now. He is more stable. Dr. Rhodes stepped closer, eyes on the dressing, the tourniquet, the monitor. His jaw tightened. You performed a field amputation, he said slowly, without a physician present. He was bleeding out, Riley said. There was not time. You do not get to make that decision, Rhodes said. You are a paramedic. The word hung there between rain and neon. Riley held his gaze. He has a pulse because somebody made it, she said. You can argue about the job title after you keep it going. Inside the ER, someone shouted his name. An alarm started to shriek. Rhodes looked from Riley to Aaron to the severed leg, then back again. Something flickered in his expression there and gone. He turned and went inside. The bay felt smaller once he left. Rain tapped the awning, the puddle under the gurney thinned. Riley peeled off her gloves and tossed them into the red bin. Her bare hands were pale knuckles pressed white. Come on, she said to Luis. We have to restock before someone else decides to fall apart. That was insane, he muttered. He muttered. That was necessary, she said. She reached into the supply cabinet and began counting gauze pads under her breath, her fingers already rebuilding what she had just spent. The supply cabinet door clicked shut. Riley slid the stocked jump bag back into its slot on the rig and wiped a streak of dried blood off the latch with the edge of her sleeve. Inside, the bay traffic started to thin. The last burn victim from the fire crew was already inside. A tech hosed off the concrete where Aaron's leg had fallen, washing pink water toward the drain. Luis leaned against the rig, scribbling numbers on his clipboard. You ever going to tell me where you learned to do that? He asked. She checked the oxygen tank gauge instead of looking at him. Do what? Cut a guy's leg off like you were buttering toast. Riley snapped the gauge cover shut. Online tutorial, she said. Luis snorted. Yeah, right. Her radio crackled at her hip, loud in the lull. Medic 3 status, Luis thumbed his mic. Medic 3 available. The voice from the dispatch came back at once. Copy. You are cleared. You can return to post. Riley heard the double beep that marked the end of the line and felt the shift. One crisis done. Room for the next one. Break room, Luis asked. 10 minutes, she said. Then we go sit where they tell us to sit. The fluorescent lights in the break room hummed faintly. The coffee tasted burnt and thin. Someone had left a box of powdered donuts open on the counter, the edges of the cardboard dark with grease. Riley sat in the corner chair at the small round table, the one with a cracked vinyl seat. Her radio lay on the table, volume turned low. She peeled the wrapper off a protein bar and took a bite that turned to sand in her mouth. 2 residents in wrinkled scrubs stood by the counter, talking like the room was empty. One had a stethoscope looped around his neck and hair that would not quite lie flat. The other was shorter still, wearing his trauma goggles on his forehead. I heard he did not even make it inside Ayo, the taller one said. They said there was blood all over the bay. Yeah, the shorter one answered. The construction guy. Some paramedic decided to go full trauma surgeon. Rhodes is furious. Riley chewed slow. The protein bar squeaked between her teeth. I mean, the guy lived, the taller one said. Last I heard he was heading to the OR. That is luck, his friend replied. You cannot just improvise surgery. That is why we have protocols. You let one cowboy get away with it, next thing you know, people are poking holes in lungs in the parking lot. The microwave beeped. Someone walked in, opened the door, pulled out something that smelled like leftover spaghetti. The residents did not lower their voices. They should fire her, the shorter one said. It is not a war zone out there. The door opened again. Emily Kwan walked in ponytail damp from the mist that still hung over the city. She held an empty mug in one hand. Her eyes flicked to the residents, then to Riley sitting alone. She crossed to the coffee pot, poured a streak of brown into her mug, added powdered creamer stirred. The spoon tapped rhythmically against the ceramic. They should at least suspend her, the tall one said. If she wants to practice trauma, she can go back to residency like the rest of us. Riley peeled another bit of the bar and went on eating. The wrapper crinkled between her fingers. Emily finished stirring and walked over without asking if the seat was taken. She sat down across from Riley and wrapped both hands around her mug. They do not know what they are talking about, Emily said quietly. Riley shrugged. They are not wrong. I broke protocol. You stopped him from bleeding out in a puddle, Emily said. They did not see his pressure crashing in real time. It still goes in the report, Riley said. And Rhodes gets to underline the parts he likes. Emily studied her for a second, head tilted as if Riley were another critical case to assess. Where did you train? She asked. Here and there, Riley said. That is not really an answer. It is the only one I have time for. Emily watched her a beat longer, then let it go. She took a sip of coffee, made a face. This tastes like the inside of a boot, she said. Riley almost smiled. Almost. The smile did not quite make it far enough. The radio on the table crackled. Medic 3 respond. Possible stroke, private residence, northeast Baltimore. Caller reports slurred speech, left-sided weakness. Louis stepped into the doorway, already reaching for his jacket. Break is over, Ever, he said. Riley drained the rest of her water, tossed the empty bottle and the half-eaten bar in the trash, and followed him out. Emily watched her go, fingers resting on the handle of her mug. Rain had tapered off outside, leaving the world wet and reflective. Streetlights glowed in every puddle. The ambulance pulled away from the bay tires, hissing over the pavement. Inside the cab, the feel was different. No siren this time, just the low growl of the engine and the muted chatter from the radio. The address was in a quiet neighborhood in the northeast, a line of blocks with small brick homes and narrow lawns that looked the same on the satellite map. Stroke, huh? Louise said. Been a while since we got a simple one. They are not simple, Riley said. He glanced at her. You know what I mean. She did. But she also knew the way labels at dispatch could lead people into thinking they already knew the story. They turned onto a tree-lined street. Lawns shone dark with water. 2 porch lights burned at the end of the block. The address they wanted had both lights on and 2 figures on the front steps pressed close together. A woman in her 30s waved her arms as they pulled up bare feet on the cold concrete. This way, Pell, she called. It is my mom. She just started talking funny and then she could not stand. Inside the house smelled like vanilla candles and laundry detergent. A television in the next room played a daytime talk show at low volume. Riley followed the daughter into the living room. An older woman sat on the couch, back straight, hands on her knees. Her face sagged on one side. The left corner of her mouth hung lower than the right. Her eyes were clear, following everything. Ms. Price, Riley said, kneeling in front of her. I am Riley. Can you tell me your name? The woman's lips moved. Sound came out, but the words were thick and mashed, like her tongue did not know which way to go. She frowned, frustrated. Can you squeeze my hand? Riley held out her right hand. The woman's right fingers closed around it, weak but obedient. And this side, Riley offered her left. Nothing. The left hand did not move. How long ago did this start? Riley asked the daughter. 20 minutes maybe, the daughter said. She was fine, and then she dropped the remote. Her words got weird. I saw this thing about strokes, and I called. Riley nodded and moved quickly through the dance of the stroke scale. Facial droop, arm drift, speech, time of onset. It fit. But something under the surface tugged at her attention. She placed 2 fingers gently along the left side of the woman's neck, feeling for the carotid pulse. The beat was there, but thinner than the right, less solid against her fingers. Your breathing feels a little shallow, Ms. Price, Riley said. She lifted her stethoscope from around her neck and listened to the woman's chest. The heart sounds were steady enough, but there was a faint whoosh between beats where there should not have been one. Luis had his radio out. Female approximately 65, he reported. Facial droop, left arm weakness, slurred speech. Onset less than 30 minutes ago. Probable CVA. We will transport to St. Barrow. Riley kept listening and then moved the stethoscope slightly, tracing the line of the sternum and the upper chest. Something in the pattern bothered her. She tried to picture the vessels under the skin the way they ran from the heart up to the brain. Vanilla candle, laundry soap, talk show, laughter. It did not match the feeling building in her gut. "Luis," she said, "get the portable ultrasound from the rig." He blinked. "For a stroke." "Please," she said. He held her stare for a second, then nodded and headed back outside. The daughter watched every move with wide eyes. "Is it a stroke?" she asked. "We need to make sure her brain is getting what it needs," Riley said. "Sometimes the problem starts a little lower down." Luis came back with the small ultrasound unit, the screen still smudged from the last call. Riley plugged in the probe thumb, moving through the menus almost without looking. She pulled up the preset she needed and pressed the cold gel packet into her palm until it burst. "Ms. Price, I'm going to put this on your chest," she said. "It will feel cold." She lifted the woman's shirt just enough to place the probe in the notch above the sternum and angled down. The image on the screen jittered and then settled. Black and gray, shades of motion. Somewhere inside that blur, the aorta pulsed. Luis leaned in, breath held. "There," Riley said quietly. The vessel on the screen looked wrong. The outer wall pulsed, but inside it, a thin flap of tissue moved back and forth with each beat. The channel on one side of the flap filled and emptied. The other side looked sluggish, like a lane of traffic blocked by wreckage. "That is not a stroke," Riley said. The daughter's voice went higher. "What does that mean?" "It means the main vessel coming out of her heart is starting to tear on the inside, Fayemu," Riley said. "We call it a dissection. If we treat it like a regular stroke, she will not make it. We need a surgeon ready when we arrive." Luis was already back on the radio voice, more urgent now, relaying the change in status. Riley kept the probe steady, watching the flap move. Miss Price looked at her eyes wide, one side of her face slack and drooping. She tried to speak, but only a thick syllable came. Riley squeezed her right hand. "We see it," she said. "We know what it is. You are not invisible. We are going to move fast." 10 minutes later, the ambulance backed into the bay at St. Barrow. The rain had started again, light and cold, dotting the stretcher sheet as they rolled inside. In trauma, Dr. Nia Patel stood waiting, gloves already on. "What have you got?" she called. "Suspected type A dissection," Riley said, already handing over her phone with a photo of the ultrasound image. "Chest pain, mild, left-sided weakness, slurred speech. Onset less than an hour, carotid weaker on the left." Patel glanced at the photo. Her expression sharpened. "You picked this up with a portable?" she asked. "It was all we had," Riley said. Patel held her gaze for a heartbeat, then nodded once. "Get her to CT and call vascular pathology. Is our Patel told her team. "If this is what I think it is, we go straight to the OR." The team moved into motion around them. As they pushed the bed away, Ms. Price's fingers brushed against Riley's. Riley gave them a quick squeeze and let go. Patel paused at the doorway. "Nice catch, Shaw," she said. Riley just nodded. Her watch sat heavy on her wrist, its frozen second hand still between 4 and 5, orange fluid dried in the scratches. When she turned away to head back to the bay, she could feel something ticking anyway. The walk back to the bay felt shorter than it had on the way in. Riley moved on muscle memory, cutting through the same hall past the same posters about hand hygiene and flu shots. The smell of antiseptic and cafeteria food blended into one flat note. Luis was waiting by the rig door, already open, pen tapping against his thigh. "She make it to CT?" he asked. "Patel took her herself," Riley said. "She saw the flap?" Luis let out a low whistle. "Guess you're on her good side now?" Riley checked the jump bag, by habit, fingers moving through compartments she already knew were full. Saline, gauze, 2 decompression needles laid side by side in their plastic sleeves. Her radio sat quiet at her hip. The usual background chatter had dipped like the city was drawing a breath. Then every radio in the bay barked at once. All units, stand by for mass casualty alert." Static cracked. A dispatcher's voice came through, pressed tight. "Reports of partial bridge collapse on Amar 695 over the Patapsco. Multiple vehicles involved unknown number of injured, fire and police en route, EMS staging on the northbound shoulder. Medic 3 respond. The air in the bay shifted. Voices rose, boots hit concrete. Luis looked at Riley. That is us. I heard Chinchada said. They climbed in. The siren came alive as they pulled out red lights bouncing off the hospital windows. Rain needled the windshield, streaking the yellow lines on the road. Traffic thinned as they headed for the interstate. Police cruisers shot past light bars blinking. A ladder truck screamed by in the opposite lane, then cut across the median up ahead. From the overpass, Riley saw the break. A section of the upper deck sagged at a rough angle concrete, sheared away in a jagged bite. Chunks of roadway had dropped onto the lower level, crushing 2 cars and pushing others sideways. Smoke drifted from somewhere under the tangle of metal. Headlights glare and hazard flashers turned everything into a stuttering nightmare of white and amber. Luis whistled under his breath. That is not small. Pull past the main pile, Riley said. We stage, then move. They parked where the incident commander pointed them near a line of other ambulances. Riley stepped out into a wall of noise, people shouting names, firefighters yelling for hose lines and tools, someone crying in high, thin bursts. For a second, the scene wavered. Dust instead of rain, sand instead of wet asphalt. Different wreckage, same chaos. Her chest tightened, then loosened as she forced herself to breathe in once out once. The noise settled into layers. She broke the scene apart, moving but walking wounded near the guardrail, one overturned pickup under the broken span, a compact car crushed almost flat under a slab of concrete, smoke from the hood of a sedan that had hit the barrier trying to avoid the mess. Luis, start here, Riley said, pointing to the blue sedan that had spun sideways but kept its roof. Driver is moving. Get vitals control what you can. Tag anyone who can walk and move them back. He nodded and headed that way, jump bag in hand. Riley ran toward the deepest part of the wreckage. The air smelled like hot metal and antifreeze. The slumped piece of bridge overhead creaked in the wind. The first car in the crushed line had taken most of the hit. The roof had buckled but not collapsed all the way. Glass glittered on the seats like frost. She climbed onto the hood, hand on the warped metal to steady herself, and peered inside. A man in the driver's seat, chest rising, blood on his forehead. In the passenger seat, a woman whose head hung at an angle that meant her spine was no longer whole. Sir, stay as still as you can, Riley said. Help is coming for you. He tried to look at her eyes, wild. His mouth shaped a name. She could not hear it over the roar. She moved on. The next car was a silver compact jammed between the concrete slab and the side of a pickup that had tipped onto its side. The driver's door was crushed in. The windshield had a spiderweb crack punched outward. A woman sat behind the wheel chest, tight against the steering column. Her eyes were open and frantic. Each breath she took was shallow. The skin around her mouth had a bluish tinge. Ma'am, my name is Riley, she said, leaning in through the broken side window. What is your name? Rachel, Moke, the woman gasped. I cannot breathe. I cannot move. Riley put a hand on her shoulder. I see you, she said. I'm going to help you breathe, but you need to stay as still as you can. The steering column had crushed the left side of Rachel's chest inward. Her ribs on that side barely moved while the right side strained with each trying breath. Air hissed through her lips. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool air. A firefighter appeared at Riley's side, turnout gear, soaked face streaked with soot. We have the cutters coming, he said. We can get the door off and take the column. How long? Riley asked. 10 minutes, maybe. Rachel's eyes fluttered. The color around her mouth grew darker. She does not have 10, Riley said. The firefighter set his jaw. What do you need? A Halligan and a spreader to get this door open enough to work, Riley said. And if you have a needle kit in your med cache, I want it. The firefighter hesitated for a heartbeat, caught between caution and the panic in Rachel's eyes. Then he nodded and ran. Riley slid her hand under Rachel's jacket, feeling along her ribs. The left side was tight, almost drum-like. When she listened with her ear close to the woman's chest, the breath sounds on that side were distant, muffled by trapped air. Tension building. Air where it should not be. Stay with me, Rachel, she said. Do you have kids? 1, Rachel whispered. He is 6. He is at school. He is at school, right? That is where he is, Riley said. We are going to get you back to him. The firefighter returned with a halogen bar, a battery-powered spreader, and a small kit with a catheter needle sealed in plastic. "Here," he said. Riley jammed the tip of the halogen into the tiny gap at the top of the door and threw her weight on it. Metal screamed. The seam widened by an inch. Enough. She shoved the spreader into the gap and flicked it on. The hydraulics pushed the door farther away from the frame, leaving a wedge of space for her arm. Rachel cried out as the column shifted a fraction. Riley met her eyes. "Breathe with me," she said. "In out as much as you can." She snapped the decompression needle kit open with her teeth and spat the plastic piece aside. No time for a perfect field. Fingertips counted ribs along the top of Rachel's chest. Second intercostal space mid-clavicular line. She cleaned a small circle with an alcohol pad more for habit than for sterility in this mess. "This will hurt," Riley said. She slid the needle in between the ribs and pushed. Resistance, then a sudden release. A long hiss of air escaped through the catheter. Rachel gasped this time, pulling in more air than she had since the crash. The bluish tinge around her mouth faded a shade. "Oh God," she said. "Oh God, that feels different." "That is the idea," Riley said. "Keep breathing slow. Do not try to talk." 2 more firefighters arrived with the larger cutters. They set up metal jaws clamping onto the warped column. Across the wreck, a higher-pitched voice shouted, "There is a kid in the back of the van. I cannot reach her." Riley's head snapped up. She looked at the firefighter next to her. "Stay with her," she said. "Do not let anyone move that chest until you are ready to pull her free." "Got it," he said. Riley pushed away from the car and sprinted toward the sound. The minivan at the end of the line had taken a direct hit to the rear. The back end was crushed, almost flat, roof-bowed rear window gone completely. The front passenger door was open, the driver's seat empty. A man in a torn dress shirt was on his knees beside it, reaching in and sobbing. "My baby is in there, Govik," he said. "She is in her seat. I cannot get her out. Please." Riley climbed onto what was left of the rear quarter panel and peered inside. The interior was a cave of twisted metal and hanging upholstery. In the middle of it, a small car seat was jammed sideways between the front seats. A little girl, maybe 2 years old, lay slumped in the straps, head tilted forward. Her face was pale. Her lips were wrong, a faint shade of blue. Her chest was not moving. "Sir, I need you to step back," Riley said. "I'm not leaving her go," he said, gripping the door frame with white knuckles. "I'm not asking you to leave," she said. "I'm asking you to give me room to reach her." Something in her tone clipped through his panic. He let go and took 2 stumbling steps backward. Riley slid inside glass, crunching under her knees. The roof brushed the back of her shoulders. The air felt thick and hot. The smell of gasoline sat underneath the metallic tang of blood and burnt rubber. She twisted the car seat enough to unbuckle the straps and ease the child out. The girl's head lolled. Her limbs were heavy. No cry, no fight. Riley laid her on the flattened front seat, tilted her head back, gently swept the small mouth with a gloved finger. Clear. She pressed 2 fingers against the tiny neck, nothing she could feel under the grime. "Come on," she whispered. She placed the heel of one hand in the center of the child's chest, using just 2 fingers' depth. 30 compressions counting under her breath, the only steady rhythm in the chaos. Then she sealed her mouth over the child's, gave 2 small breaths, watched for chest rise. Nothing. Again. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Outside, someone had opened another door. A familiar voice cut through. "Shaw, talk to me," Dr. Patel called. "What have you got?" "Female toddler," Riley answered without stopping her count. "Pulseless apnea found in a rear-facing car seat." Her arms were starting to burn. Sweat stung the cut on her knuckle from earlier. On the next breath, the girl's chest hitched. She coughed a weak, wet sound and then drew a shaky inhale all on her own. A thin cry followed high and sharp. Relief washed through the cramped van. The father sobbed louder this time, with something like hope in the sound. Riley turned the child onto her side to let fluid drain, then quickly checked for a pulse again, faint but present, faster with each beat. "We have return of spontaneous circulation," she said. Patel appeared at the door behind the father, wearing a reflective vest over her scrubs, her hair jammed into a surgical cap. "You dragged her out of that?" Patel asked, looking at the twisted frame. "She was not about to climb out herself," Riley said. She wrapped the little girl in a foil blanket handed in by a firefighter and passed her carefully to another medic waiting outside. "Straight back to St. Barrow Pediatric Trauma," Patel said to the medic. Tell them she is coming in hot." The medic nodded and took off at a run. Riley crawled out of the van, legs shaking a little when she straightened. She wiped her forearm across her forehead, leaving a streak of someone else's blood. Sirens came and went. Radios crackled. The scene shifted as crews freed more people, some crying, some eerily silent. By the time the last patient was loaded, more than 2 hours had passed. Riley found herself sitting on the rear bumper of the rig, a bottle of water in one hand, her other hand resting on her knee. Her pants were torn at the thigh, a smear of oil darkening the fabric. Louis sat beside her chest, rising and falling under his damp uniform shirt. "That," he said between swallows of water, "is the most messed up thing I have ever seen." "It was a lot," Riley said. Across the way, Dr. Patel was talking with the incident commander. When she finished, she walked over boots, leaving wet prints on the asphalt. "You decompressed her chest," Patel said without preamble. "She was tensioning," Riley said. "She was not going to make it to your table." Patel studied her face. "That is not standard paramedic protocol, she said. "At least not in this state." "It works," Riley said. "I know," Patel answered. "I have seen it done before, not here, not on the side of a freeway." Her gaze dropped to the watch on Riley's wrist and the faint outline of the Navy anchor tattoo, barely visible under the cuff of her sleeve. "I have worked with combat medics," Patel said quietly. "That is what this looked like." Riley did not answer. She took another drink of water and watched an empty stretcher roll by its wheels, rattling over a crack in the pavement. The ride back to St. Barrow was quiet. No music, no chatter, just the low hum of the engine and the dull ache settling into Riley's shoulders. Rain ticked against the roof in a steady pattern. By the time they backed into the bay, the adrenaline had thinned. Her hands were starting to feel heavy, like she had been wearing gloves all day, even after she pulled them off. Inside the ER pulsed with its usual rhythm again. Curtains half open. Nurses walking fast but not running. Monitors chirping in mismatched tempo. Riley signed off her charts at the paramedic station. Her name filled one line after another. Mechanism of injury, vitals, interventions. She wrote the words without thinking about them, the way a hand draws letters it learned as a child. A shadow filled the doorway. "Shaw," Emily said, "you have a fan upstairs." Riley looked up from the clipboard. "A what?" "A Marine," Emily said. "The guy from this morning. Training accident on base. Compound femur. He woke up about an hour ago and he has been asking for the paramedic from the bay ever since." Riley slid the pen into the spine of the chart. "He should probably be asking for his surgeon," she said. "He did," Emily said. "Then he kept describing someone who sounds a lot like you. Dark hair too calm, told the medics where to put the tourniquet." Riley hesitated. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder. "Which room?" she asked. "ICU bed 4, Emily said. "If you're not too busy doing wildly inappropriate procedures somewhere." The corner of Riley's mouth twitched. "I will risk it," she said. The ICU sat in a different kind of quiet. Lights dimmer, footsteps softer, machines louder because fewer voices covered their noise. Bed 4 belonged to a man with a shaved head and a scruffy line of beard along his jaw. His left leg was elevated in traction, wrapped in layers of cast and padding. A USMC tattoo curled around his forearm, ink faded at the edges. He turned his head when she stepped inside. Up close, he looked younger than his file had said. Early 30s, maybe. Brown eyes sharp, despite the meds flowing into his IV. "You are her," he said. He said. Riley checked the chart clipped to the foot of his bed. "Staff Sergeant Marco Reyes," she said. "Femur fracture, intramedullary nailing, lucky to still have the leg." He ignored the summary. "You are her, he repeated. "I knew it when they brought me in. I heard your voice. You said Yalla 3 times when they moved me. You always say that when people move too slow." Riley reached for his IV line, checking the drip rate. "You were pretty out of it when you arrived, Sergeant," she said. "Pain can make everything feel familiar." He watched her hands, shifted the tourniquet, he said. Asked for more hemostats before the doc even walked in. Same hands, same voice. His gaze slid to her wrist. The watch. The edge of the anchor tattoo peeking from under the cuff of her sleeve. "You are Navy," he said. "Corpsman?" Riley's fingers stilled on the clamp for the briefest moment. "I am a paramedic," she said. "You were a corpsman," he insisted. "Hospital corpsman, 3rd class. They called you Doc. You were attached to a mixed unit outside Fallujah. 2 tours." He looked past her for a second at something that was not in the room. "We hit an IED en route Utah," he said. Our corpsman got thrown from the Humvee, he broke his neck. We thought that was it. Then another convoy rolled up. Army trucks, no medic. Just a woman in dusty camis and a flak that did not fit right. Riley swallowed. The room smelled like antiseptic and plastic. Under that, in her memory, came diesel fumes and burned rubber. You climbed out of the back of that truck like you were walking into a clinic, Reyes said. Martinez was bleeding from a hole in his chest. You grabbed a glove, cut the fingers off, taped it over the wound, and talked to him in Spanish so he would not freak out. You remember that? Images flashed like slides on a wall. Martinez's face gray under grime. Blood foaming at the corner of his mouth. Her own hands shaking until they found something to do. A rubber glove flattening against a sucking wound when the next breath came. I treat a lot of people, Riley said. Her voice was steady, but there was a strain in it. Faces blur. You did not blur to us, Reyes said. There was a kid from Georgia screaming about his legs. Jefferson. You wrapped them with some bandages I had never seen before, white with green stitching. You held pressure on one wound for so long your arms had to be on fire. We were taking fire the whole time. You would duck when the rounds hit close, then pop back up and keep working. The beep of Reyes's monitor ticked in the air, second by second. You saved 8 Marines that day, he said softly. Then you disappeared. We tried to find you. Martinez wanted to put you in for a medal. Nobody could even tell us what unit you were with. Riley looked at the floor. That was a long time ago, she said. Reyes frowned. You remember, though, he said. I remember a lot of things, she said. Not all of them matter anymore. He sank back into the pillow for a moment, studying her. Docs told us later about the girl, he said, the Iraqi kid. Something in Riley's shoulders went tight. You do not need to talk about that, she said. You were working on her when the second wave of fire hit, he went on. Little thing, maybe 8, brown dress. Someone said she took shrapnel from the blast. You would not leave her. They had to drag you to the truck when the order came. The smell was there again. Copper and smoke. The feel of a small rib cage under her palms too still. They said she was gone before you got to her, Doc, Reyes said. Too much inside damage, nothing anyone could have done. That is what reports say, Riley murmured. Reports are tidy. Reyes watched her face, saw the way her jaw clenched. You are here now, Gepewokent, he said. Working as a street medic, you could have stayed in. You were the best corp man I ever saw. Why are you not still wearing a uniform? That is personal, she said. He opened his mouth to push, then stopped. He saw something in her eyes that told him enough was enough. You saved my life twice, you know, he said instead. Once there, once this morning. Riley checked his pulse more for something to do than because she expected a surprise. You were never in as much danger here, she said. I was wrong about that bridge, he said. If that scaffolding had come down a few inches to the left, I would be short more than a piece of femur. She adjusted his pillow, wrote a note on his chart. Get some rest, Sergeant, she said. As she stepped out into the hall, she did not see Dr. Daniel Rhodes at the nurse's station, but he saw her. He stood with a chart in his hand, expression neutral, while Reyes's words drifted down the hall. You saved 8 Marines that day. Rhodes looked down at the papers in his hand, then at Riley's back as she walked away. His fingers tightened around the chart. Later in his office, the blinds were half closed against the gray light. The room smelled faintly of stale coffee and printer toner. Rhodes sat at his desk with his laptop open and a folder of printed records spread in front of him. He had typed her name into the credentialing system. That had led him to a note about prior service. That, in turn, had led him to a request through a military liaison he still knew by name. Navy Hospital Corpsman 3rd Class Riley Shaw. 2 tours in Iraq, attached to Marine and Army units, commendations, combat action ribbon, words like gallantry and under fire. One line tucked lower on the page caught his eye. Subject of administrative review relating to civilian casualty during engagement in Fallujah, cleared of wrongdoing. He leaned back, rubbing a hand over his jaw. There was more on a thin report to the side. An 8-year-old girl, Iraqi national shrapnel wounds, non-survivable internal trauma. Corpsman Shaw recorded as attending under hostile fire for 37 minutes. Rhodes stared at the last line. No further action. He closed the file and called down to the paramedic office. Can you send Shaw to my office when she gets back to base? 5 minutes later, Riley stood in the doorway. Her scrub top was clean again, her hair tied back tighter than before. The lines at the corners of her eyes looked deeper. You wanted to see me, she said. Close the door, please, Rhodes said. She did, then stood in front of his desk. She did not sit until he gestured to the chair. He let the silence hang for a moment. You did not list your military service on your employment application, he said. It did not ask, she replied. It asked for prior clinical experience, he said. I listed 10 years as a paramedic, she said. That is clinical. It is not the whole story, he said. It is the part that matters to the job you hired me for, she said. He tapped the folder with one finger. You were a Navy corpsman, he said. You worked in combat zones. You were decorated for it. You were also the subject of an investigation into a civilian death. Riley's eyes flicked to the folder, then back to his face. I was cleared, she said. I know, he said. This is not about that. This is about transparency. You have been performing procedures in my ER that are outside your scope of practice under state law. Amputation in the bay, needle decompression in a vehicle. You did not think any of that was relevant. I thought bleeding out was relevant, she said. I thought air in the wrong place crushing a lung was relevant. The rest is paperwork. This hospital lives on paperwork, Rhodes said. There was more heat in his voice now. We do not get to pretend we are in a field hospital because it makes us feel brave. Riley's jaw worked once. I was not trying to feel anything, she said. I was trying to keep people alive when seconds mattered, and you were not there yet. His eyes flashed. That is not your decision to make, he said. You operate under protocols that exist for a reason. You went beyond them, repeatedly, without consulting any physician. Your residents were still in the doorway arguing about where to put him, she said. Aaron Blake did not have time for a debate. You are suspended, Rhodes said. The words settled in the air like dust. Effective when? Riley asked. Effective now, he said. Pending review of your conduct and your full file. Leave your badge and radio on my desk. You will be contacted when the committee has a decision. She sat very still for a moment. Her hands were folded in her lap, knuckles white. You are suspending me for saving lives, she said. I'm suspending you for insubordination and for putting this institution at risk, he said. You want to work within a system, you follow its rules. Overhead a chime sounded. The speaker clicked. All available trauma staff to the bay, a voice announced. Multiple victims from an apartment fire inbound. Rhodes glanced at the ceiling, then back at her. We have more than enough staff, he said. Leave your gear. Riley stared at him. Her radio sat heavy on her hip. Her badge hung at her chest, plastic catching the light. She reached up, unclipped the badge, and set it carefully on his desk. Her fingers lingered a half-second longer than necessary. Then she unhooked the radio and placed it beside the badge. The alarm sounded again, another call for help, louder this time. She turned to the door. Shaw, Rhodes said sharply. She stepped into the hall. Smoke clung faintly to the air already carried in on the first wave from the fire. Stretcher wheels rattled on linoleum. Someone coughed deep and raw. Riley walked toward the sound, empty space on her chest where the badge had been, her hands curling and uncurling at her sides. The trauma bay was already full when Riley stepped through the doors. Smoke smell rode in with the first stretchers clinging to hair and clothes and the blankets wrapped around shivering bodies. 2 from the 4th floor, a paramedic shouted. Smoke inhalation, possible airway burns. Over here, Emily called, pulling a curtain back. Riley moved on instinct. She took over the head of the bed for an older man whose beard was gray under the soot. His eyes were glassy lashes clumped with moisture. Sir, can you open your mouth for me? She asked. He tried. The inside of his lips looked pink for now. His tongue was not swollen. Good for the moment. She secured an oxygen mask, checked the seal, listened to his lungs. Breath sounds rough but present on both sides. Saturation creeping up as the mask did its work. On the next bed, a woman in her 50s lay still, arms red and blistered where the fire had licked her skin. A nurse cut away melted clothing while another started an IV. Riley! Daniel Rhodes's voice cut across the controlled chaos. She looked up. He stood at the edge of the bay, white coat traded for navy scrubs, expression tight. You are suspended, he said. Step away from the patient. Emily glanced between them, hands still on the oxygen tubing. The older man wheezed behind his mask. I have his airway, Riley said. You have 3 stable burns and 4 nurses in the room. You can yell at me once he is upstairs. Rhodes's jaw clenched. He seemed ready to argue. Then another alarm sounded higher pitched this time. Someone called his name from the far bed. He looked at Riley, looked at the patient, and chose. Fine, he said. Finish that transfer, then get out of my department. She nodded once and turned back to the man, focusing on the steady rhythm of his breaths. A respiratory therapist arrived with a nebulizer set up. Riley handed off the oxygen mask and stepped back. As soon as her hands were empty, the bay speaker chimed. The overhead voice sounded tighter than before. Incoming trauma, 8-year-old male struck by vehicle, CPR in progress, estimated time of arrival 2 minutes. The room seemed to inhale and hold it. The nurses looked at one another. A younger resident swallowed hard. Riley's heart stuttered. 8. She saw a dusty street in her mind. A small body on broken concrete. Brown dress. Bare feet. Her fingers flexed at her sides. Rhodes turned toward her. "You heard me," he said. "You are not on this case." "You need every hand," she said. "We have pediatric-trained staff," he said. "What we do not have is room for someone who does not know how to take an order." Her chest felt tight, different from the way it had on the bridge. This was not adrenaline. This was something colder. "You are going to stand here and watch if something goes wrong," she asked quietly. "I'm going to let my team work without interference," he said. "Yeah," Jane said. The bay doors slid open with their usual soft hiss. The ambulance siren cut off at the threshold. 2 paramedics burst through, pushing a small gurney that looked even smaller with the child on it. He was little dark hair matted with blood at the temple. A cervical collar wrapped his neck. His shirt had been cut away. There was a tube between his teeth attached to a bag that one of the paramedics squeezed in regular intervals. His chest rose more on the right side than the left. 8-year-old male, "Guonk," the lead medic called. "Hit by pickup at about 30 miles per hour. Found unresponsive, GCS 3 on scene, intubated. Lost pulses 5 minutes ago, CPR ongoing. Suspected abdominal trauma from impact." A nurse jumped onto a stool and took over chest compressions, both hands on the tiny sternum. The bag valve kept moving, pushing air in. The monitor showed a thin, chaotic rhythm that danced between organized and not. Riley stood at the edge of the scene just inside the doorway. She was close enough to see the details, far enough that nobody had assigned her a role. The left half of the boy's chest lagged behind the right with every breath. On the left side, the ribs barely moved. The skin in that area seemed tighter stretched. Her watch rested cold on her wrist. The second hand still pointed between 4 and 5. The noise around her faded. In its place came the memory of another bay improvised between 2 Humvees. A child's chest that did not rise on one side. A field kit without enough needles. She had not moved fast enough then. That was the story she had told herself for years. Across the bed, Patel snapped on a second pair of gloves. She looked at the monitor, at the compressions, at the pale face under the dried blood. "Tube is good," someone said. "Equal condensation." "Breath sounds," Patel said. A resident slapped a stethoscope to the right chest. "Present on the right," he said. "And the left?" Patel asked. He pressed the bell to the left side, frowning. "Diminished," he said. "Maybe absent. Hard to tell with the compressions." Riley's fingers curled. The decompression needle on the crash cart seemed to glow in its slot. 3 seconds. She did not move. Then she did. She pushed past a tech and reached for the cart. "Brennan," Rhodes snapped. She did not look at him. She already had the needle in her hand, plastic crackling as she ripped it open. She stepped up to the bed opposite the resident. "I have a likely tension pneumothorax on the left," she said. "Chest wall is tight. Trachea is starting to deviate." "He needs volume," the resident protested. "He is hypotensive." "He needs a lung," Riley said. She found the landmarks with her fingertips, counting ribs. Second intercostal space. Mid-clavicular line. She swabbed the small patch of skin with alcohol, then drove the needle in. There was a moment of resistance, then a soft pop. A stream of air hissed out, followed by a faint smell of blood and trapped breath. The next squeeze of the bag sent air into a chest that rose more evenly. The monitor numbers twitched upward by a few points. The boy's skin, which had been trending toward gray, warmed by a fraction of a shade. "SAT is climbing," Emily called out. 72, 76, 80. Patel looked at Riley over the bed. The expression in her eyes was not surprise, it was recognition. "Keep compressions going," Patel said. "Get another large bore IV. Call the OR and let them know we are coming with a pediatric liver laceration until proven otherwise." The team surged around the gurney. Riley stepped back, breathing hard. Her hands had a faint tremor now that they were idle. She pressed them against her thighs until it faded. The boy disappeared through the doors to the operating rooms in a whirl of green scrubs and metal rails. The bay settled slowly. Voices dropped. The smell of smoke lingered. In the hallway, Riley leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Her legs felt like someone had swapped them out for a cheaper pair. Footsteps approached. "You froze," Nia Patel said. Riley opened her eyes. Patel stood with her arms crossed, a smear of someone else's blood on her sleeve. "For a second," Patel went on, "when they brought him in." "It was 3, Riley said. Her voice came out rough. "I counted." Patel nodded. "Then you moved. That is what I saw." Riley looked past her at the closed doors that led to surgery. "There was a girl," she said. "In Iraq. Blast victim, 8. About his size, I did not move fast enough." "You do not know that," Patel said. "I know it," Riley said. "It has been playing in my head for 17 years. Patel considered her. "You ever talk to anyone about that?" she asked. "Professionally, I mean." "I talk to people like you," Riley said. "At nurses' stations, in halls." "That is not what I asked," Patel said. Before Riley could answer, an overhead call interrupted. Code Blue, Pediatric Intensive Care, Bed 2. Patel's head snapped up. That is him, she said. They ran. In the PICU, the boy lay under bright lights, small body dwarfed by the bed. Wires trailed from his chest to a monitor that showed a jagged failing rhythm. Tubes ran to his arms, to his mouth, to the machines that beeped and pumped. A nurse was already at the head bagging. A resident counted compressions under his breath as his hands moved over the boy's sternum. Ventricular fibrillation, someone said, charging to 120 joules. The defibrillator paddles met the small chest. The boy's body jerked. The line on the monitor squirmed, then fell back into chaos. Again, Rhodes said. He had appeared at some point, breath short, hair pushed back with one hand. They shocked. The rhythm fluttered, then flattened. A systole, the resident said. His voice sounded too young. Riley stood at the foot of the bed, her lungs burning from the run up the stairs. Ordinary time seemed to slow. The space between beeps became a solid wall of silence. Resume compressions, Patel said. Push one of epi. They worked. 2 minutes, then 4. The clock on the wall rolled forward. The monitor stayed stubbornly flat. The line did not twitch. Nothing, the resident said softly. No electrical activity. Rhodes looked at the monitor, then at the clock. We are at 20 minutes of arrest, he said. We have given 5 rounds of EP2 shocks, no rhythm, no pulse. He drew in a breath. Time of death 21:43, he said. No, Riley said. Heads turned. You are not running this code, Rhodes said, and he is gone. She stepped closer to the bed, around a rolling table, her hand landing on the boy's chest, where the residents had just been. He is 8, she said. We can go longer. There is no activity, the resident said. His face was pale. We are only causing trauma now. Riley started compressions, her palms pressed down one after another at the proper rate. The boy's ribs flexed under her hands. Get out of the way, Shaw, Rhodes said. Call security if you need to, she said. Just keep the drugs coming. That is enough, Rhodes snapped. Patel put a hand on his arm. Let her go, she said quietly. 2 more minutes. Rhodes stared at her, then he stepped back. Riley's arm screamed. Sweat ran down her spine, her shoulders burned. Her mind narrowed to the count. 27, 28, 29, 30. She paused for a breath to be squeezed in, then resumed. The monitor did not move. The line glowed a thin, accusing green. Her watch bit into her skin. In her mind, the second hand tried to tick. 4:07. 4:07. Somewhere under all of it, she heard the echo of her own voice from another place. You were not fast enough. Her pace faltered for a fraction. She pressed harder. Come on, she said. I'm not leaving you here. Her voice dropped to a whisper that barely reached her own ears. The words came in Arabic the way they had years ago in a ruined street. Please, she said, stay. Her hand stayed on his chest, fingers spread. She was not even sure she was pressing anymore. The monitor beeped. Once. Everyone froze. Another blip, a small peak, then another more regular this time. Wait, the resident said. Wait, we have something. The flat line resolved into a fragile rhythm, slow and even at first, then a little more steady. Patel leaned in and pressed 2 fingers to the boy's neck. Pulse, she said, weak, but it is there. Respiratory adjusted settings. The ventilator hissed softly, now in sync with a heart that had decided to join in after all. Riley stepped back. Her arms felt hollow. She could not feel her hands. Rhodes stared at the monitor. We called it, he said quietly. You almost did, Patel replied. Riley walked out of the room before either of them could say anything else. The stairwell around the corner was cooler. Concrete walls, steel railings, the hum of the building's systems in the background. She sat on the bottom step, elbows on her knees, head down. Her hands hung between her legs, still slightly curled. Footsteps approached, lighter than the ones in the unit. Emily appeared holding 2 bottles of water. She sat down on the step below Riley and offered one up. He is stable, Emily said. For now. They are adjusting his drips, but his pressure is holding. Riley twisted the cap off the water and drank half of it in one go. The cold hit her empty stomach and made her shiver. You were there, she asked. At the end, Emily said. I saw the screen. She watched Riley for a moment. What you did in there, Emily said. I have never seen anyone refuse to stop like that. I should have stopped, Riley said. Her voice was low. There is a point where you are just hurting them. He has a pulse, Emily said. That is not nothing. Riley rested the bottle against her knee. Her hand still shook just a little. There was a girl, she said. She did not come back. Emily did not ask for details. She just sat there close enough that Riley could feel the warmth of another person in the cold stairwell. They stayed like that until the tremor in Riley's hands faded and her breathing evened out again. The stairwell door opened again, heavier footsteps this time, slower, like whoever it was had decided something on the way down. Riley lifted her head. Daniel Rhodes stood a few steps above scrub top, wrinkled hair pushed back. Nia Patel was behind him, hand on the rail. Emily stood hesitated, then squeezed Riley's shoulder once and slipped past them up the stairs. For a moment, nobody spoke. The low hum of the building filled the gap. Rhodes sat on the step across from Riley, one level lower so they were eye to eye. Patel stayed standing, one hand braced against the wall. "I owe you an apology," Rhodes said. Riley wiped the back of her hand across her face. It came away damp. She was not sure when that had happened. "For what?" she asked. "For calling you dangerous, Foz," he said. "For saying your judgment was compromised. For thinking I understood the limits of what you can do." And his gaze dropped to her hands, still faintly marked where her palms had pressed into Leo Carter's chest. "In that room, I saw someone who refused to give up when everyone else had," he said, "including me." Riley looked down at her watch. The second hand was still fixed in place. "I kept going because I could not stand to hear that flat line again," she said. "That is not sophisticated judgment." "It is also not nothing, Isha," Patel said. "You saw something in him the rest of us had written off." "He was 8, Riley said. "I could not walk away from that twice." Rhodes let out a slow breath. "I pulled your military file," he said. "I know about Fallujah, the IED, the girl." Riley's jaw clenched. "You had no right," she said. "I had every procedural right," he said. "The hospital did too, but that is not why I am bringing it up. I am bringing it up because I read all of it this time. Not just the summary." He reached into the folder he had brought down with him and took out a thinner report. He did not hand it to her. He just looked at it for a second, then back at her. "The investigators wrote that her injuries were not survivable," he said. "They wrote that you treated her under fire for 37 minutes. They also wrote that while you were trying to save her, you directed 2 other Marines and an interpreter to treat 3 additional wounded civilians. All 3 lived." Riley stared at him. "They did not tell me that," she said. "They were not writing it for you," he said quietly. Patel shifted her weight. "You have been carrying that day like it was a single failure," she said. "It was not." Riley closed her eyes for a moment. The stairwell tilted. "When I left Feptim," she said, "I swore I would not let my head do that to me again on a call. Freeze, loop. I thought if I just kept moving, it would stay behind me." "It did not," Rhodes said. "We both saw that today." Riley opened her eyes. "So what now, Reese?" she asked. "You fire me properly this time, without letting me run to the bay first." He shook his head. "No," he said. "I am not firing you." She frowned. "You already suspended me," she said. "I did," he said. "And I'm still not comfortable with the way you treat protocols like suggestions. But I am even less comfortable with the idea of wasting what you know." Patel stepped down onto the same level. "We talked to the board," she said. "They had an emergency session while Leo was in surgery. They looked at the survival numbers from the last 3 months. Bridge collapse, the fire, the dissection you caught with a portable. Aaron Blake." Rhodes held out a different folder. The cover had the hospital logo at the top. Underneath a simple heading. "Combat Medicine Integration Program, Kishade," he said. "Clinical Director Riley Shaw if you want it." She did not reach for the folder right away. She watched his face, waiting for the catch. "You want me to teach people to do what I do," she said. "We want you to teach them how to think the way you do when the clock is stacked against them," Patel said. "Triage and chaos, hemorrhage control, when to break glass on a protocol because it will kill someone if you do not." Rhodes nodded. "It would be a formal position, yeah," he said. "Not just a paramedic who happens to be good under pressure. You would train residents, nurses, paramedics, anyone who touches a critical patient." Riley leaned back against the step. "And what about the part where I freeze when I see an 8-year-old?" she asked. "That is part of the reason this comes with strings," Bichirostin said. "You need help, real help, not just sitting in a stairwell after you drag someone back." "You mean therapy," she said. "Weekly, he said. "With someone who understands combat trauma. The hospital will pay for it. That is non-negotiable." She stared at the folder, then took it. The paper felt heavier than it should. "I have 3 conditions, she said. Patel's mouth ticked up. "Of course you do." "1," Riley said. "Therapy like you said. Not once a month. I go every week. You do not yank me off the schedule because I'm gone for an hour with my brain peeled open. Done, Rhodes said. 2, she said. If I'm teaching, I am teaching everyone, no hierarchy. Residents, attendings, nurses, techs, medics, they are in the same room. They learn the same skills. Patel nodded. Agreed. 3, Riley said. If I can show with data and cases that a protocol needs to change, we do not bury it in a committee for a year. We move, quickly, within reason, but not at glacial speed. Rhodes hesitated, then gave a short nod. We can build that into the program, he said. You get a direct line to the quality committee. You bring them numbers, they respond. Riley looked at him. You really went from dangerous to here run a department fast, she said. You made a kid's heart start beating again after I called his time of death, he said. It changed my risk calculation. She let out something between a laugh and a breath. Fine, Shiva, she said. Then yes. Rhodes extended his hand. She took it. For the first time all day, hers did not shake. Good, Patel said, because the pediatric team would like to talk to you before they figure out how to explain that code in their notes. 2 days later, the ICU felt different, quieter in a lighter way. Leo Carter lay in a different room, less wires, less equipment. His chest rose on its own. His eyes were closed, but his color was better. His mother sat by the bed, fingers worrying a folded piece of paper. When Riley stepped in, she stood so quickly the chair scraped. They told me, she said. What you did. They said he was gone and you did not stop. Riley glanced at the boy. A cartoon blanket covered his legs. Someone had taped a drawing of a rocket ship to the wall. I just kept doing my job, Riley said. His mother shook her head. You did more than that, she said. I do not know how to say thank you large enough. You do not have to, Riley said. Him walking out of here someday will cover it. Leo's mother pressed the paper into Riley's hand. He drew this morning, she said. He said it is for you. The drawing was simple. Thick marker lines, a stick figure with dark hair and a big blue rectangle on the chest like a badge. Next to it, a smaller figure holding a baseball bat. Above them, big block letters. Thank you for not giving up on me. Riley swallowed around the tightness in her throat. I will keep it, she said. 6 months later, the training room on the 4th floor did not look like any other classroom in the hospital. The whiteboard was crowded with diagrams of arteries and sketches of tourniquet placement. Mannequins lay on tables with melange wounds painted in deep reds and purples. A group of residents, nurses, and paramedics sat in mismatched chairs watching as Riley clicked to the next slide. In urban trauma, our average time from arrival to decisive intervention used to be 11 minutes, she said. After we started integrating combat medicine principles into the workflow, that dropped to 6. A graph on the screen showed 2 lines, one higher in red, one lower in blue. In the same period, she went on, mortality in patients with major hemorrhage dropped by 34%. A resident raised his hand. What about liability, VA? He asked. If we deviate from standard protocols and something goes wrong. Riley rested her hand on the edge of the table. You document why you did what you did, she said. You make your reasoning clear. You show you were acting to preserve life when the textbook did not fit the case. A nurse at the back spoke up. And if we follow the protocol and the patient dies, she said. What then? Riley looked at the photo on the next slide before she brought it up. Then you have to live with that too, she said. The question is not whether you will make perfect choices. You will not. The question is whether you are thinking, really thinking, when the clock starts to scream at you. She clicked. Aaron Blake filled the screen. He stood on a prosthetic leg in a backyard, one arm around each of his daughters. All 3 girls grinned at the camera. Mechanism, she said. Construction collapse. Next slide. Rachel Moore, arm in a sling, son tucked against her side. Mechanism. MVC with intrusion. Blunt chest trauma. Next slide. Leo in a small baseball uniform cap, too big bat, balanced on his shoulder. Mechanism, pedestrian versus truck, Riley said. He loves shortstop, apparently. The room was quiet. None of them care what you call what you do, she said. They care that you do it. After class, as the group filtered out, a young woman hung back. Dark hair pulled into a severe bun. eyes with shadows under them. "You are Angela," Riley said. "Tommy said you might drop in." "Yes, ma'am," Angela said, then winced. "Sorry. Yes, I did 3 tours as an Army medic in Afghanistan. I have been with City EMS 8 months. "You freeze sometimes, Riche," Riley said, on calls that looked too familiar. Angela blinked. "Yeah?" "You seeing anyone, huh?" Riley asked. "Outside the VA group once a month." Angela shook her head. "Start bum," Riley said. "If you want, I can give you the name of someone who has been listening to me complain for the last half year." Angela gave a short laugh. "I did not think someone like you needed that," she said. "Someone like me especially needs that," Riley said. She handed Angela a card. "Also," she said, "training cohort starts next week. We run drills on mass casualty blast patterns, that sort of thing. I could use another brain that has seen dust instead of rain." Angela turned the card over in her fingers. "I will be there," she said. That evening in the small office that now had her name on the door, Riley opened the top drawer of her desk. Her old watch lay inside face, cracked hands, frozen at 04:07. She picked it up. The plastic felt worn smooth where it had rubbed against her wrist for years. In her other pocket, the folded drawing from Leo stayed where she had tucked it, paper softened by handling. She set the watch back in the drawer and closed it. Her pager vibrated on the desk. She picked it up and read the line. "Multi-vehicle collision, multiple injuries, all hands to the bay." The echo of that phrase no longer tightened her throat. It just meant what it said. Riley clipped the pager to her waistband, grabbed the training binder without thinking about it, and headed for the elevator. The ambulance bay smelled like wet asphalt again. Lights flashed against the low clouds. Voices rose as the first rig backed in. At the edge of the concrete, under the harsh lamps, her team gathered. Luis, Emily. A couple of residents from her coarse faces said eyes clearer than they had been 6 months ago. Angela among them, now jump bag on her shoulder. Riley pulled on a fresh pair of gloves. Her hands were steady. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.